So the first thing I need, obviously, is some cornmeal. So I've got some yellow cornmeal here, and I need 1 1/4 cups of that. Now, cornmeal is a little bit heavier, obviously, than flour. It also doesn't have that gluten in there, which makes this actually a really great recipe to sub out for gluten-free. So if you were doing this gluten-free, you'd use gluten-free all-purpose as well. But that's 1 1/4 cups of that cornmeal in there. Into there, I'm gonna go in with a cup of all-purpose flour. Again, if you're going gluten-free, an all-purpose gluten-free flour blend would be absolutely perfect. I'm going regular today, though. Add that on in. Now, for a little bit of lift to kind of bring more lightness into these cornbread muffins, I'm gonna add in some chemical leaveners. So that's baking powder and baking soda. Because the cornmeal is a little bit heavier, I want a good amount of that just to give it a little bit of a rise. So I'm gonna go in with 2 teaspoons of baking powder. It was a really weird way to open that jar. Did you ever do something and you're like, wait, what? Anyway, okay. Just my own thoughts that I'm saying out loud today. We got it. All right, in with that. And then I'm gonna go in with 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Baking powder isn't as strong as baking soda, so that's gonna give you a good kind of puff, especially when it hits the heat of the oven, but it's gonna be a gradual one. The baking soda is the thing that's really gonna kind of puff it up and give you that lift, which is a dream. So 1/2 teaspoon of that goes in. Then I'm gonna go in with 3/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm going with kosher salt. If you do use sea salt in your house, pull it back to about 1/2 teaspoon because sea salt's a little bit saltier tasting than kosher salt. So I'm gonna give that a whisk just to combine. Looking beautiful. This would be great with chili. This would be great with like a Sunday supper. Ooh, what a dream. Now, for the wet ingredients, you wanna mix them separately and then bring them together. So the first thing we need is that pumpkin. Now, I am just using a good old-fashioned can of pumpkin. Don't get pumpkin pie filling because it's very different. That's gonna make these cornbread muffins taste a little funny. So we've just got pure pumpkin puree. I'm using 1 cup of that. 'Tis the season, Halloween's on Friday, so I bet you probably have some pumpkin in your cupboard, maybe leftover from Thanksgiving. Hanging out. So that's going in. Into there, I'm also gonna go in with a cup of buttermilk. Now the buttermilk has acidity in it, which is gonna help those chemical leaveners puff up. Looking absolutely beautiful. Then to sweeten this up, I'm going in with a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. I love the molassesy flavor in there. Super tasty. And it's funny, anytime you're making cake or cookies or anything, sugar is actually considered a wet ingredient, so you mix it in with all the wets. Now, for a little bit more sweetness, and just to give this a little bit of a Canadian spin, we're going in with 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. Gotta love it. Just a little free pour for you. These are the biggest sleeves. I've never baked with sleeves so big. And I'm gonna go in with 2 eggs as well. The eggs are gonna help bind everything, looking beautiful. And because I'm mixing this all kind of in one bowl, you don't really have to add the eggs one at a time. You can kind of just add it all in and give it a good mix. So I'm gonna use my whisk just to get that all combined. And as you'll notice, I haven't put any fat in here yet. For the fat, you could use butter, you could use oil, but since I'm gonna add bacon into these muffins, I'm gonna use that bacon fat, because like, why not? So I cooked off 6 strips of bacon here. Whenever I'm making bacon, I like to start it in a cold pan. So I lined this pan with a bit of parchment paper, popped it into the oven with the bacon on it, the cold oven, then I heated it to 400 degrees. Once it came up to temperature, I then set a timer for about 8 minutes until that bacon's crispy and beautiful. Super easy, you're gonna get perfectly cooked bacon every time. Now you need a 1/4 cup of fat, so what I'm gonna do is measure off this bacon fat. And depending on how much, oh my gosh, did we nail it? Oh, we're getting there. Let's see. Do we have a 1/4 cup? This would be an absolute thrill, everybody. Okay, we're almost there. We're almost there. I am going to top it off with a little bit of oil. If you don't have quite that 1/4 cup, just add in some oil or a little bit of melted butter. That'll be absolutely perfect. I'm going to go in with that fat. That's going to bring that bacony flavor throughout all of these muffins, making it absolutely beautiful. All right, now we need to bring the wet and the dry together. So I'm going to go in with the dry and pop that in. Now, the only thing that's a little bit different about making like a cornbread or something like that rather than a normal cake is because you have cornmeal in here, you wanna give this batter about 10 to 15 minutes just to rest. You wanna set it aside. If you've ever made cornbread before and found it a little bit dry or crumbly, it's probably because you didn't set it aside to rest. By setting it aside, that's gonna allow that cornmeal to hydrate a little bit, giving a little bit more structure into these muffins, and making them have a nicer kind of fluffier texture while still being nice and beautiful kind of dense cornbread. All right, so I'm gonna pretend I'm setting that aside for 10 minutes. Is everybody Pretending with me? Okay, good, yeah. But now I'm gonna go in with that bacon. So I've got those 6 strips of bacon here. Now this is totally optional. If you didn't wanna make this with bacon, you could obviously swap out that bacon fat for a little bit of melted butter or that oil. You don't have to do the bacon, but in my mind, why wouldn't you? Give that a nice chop up. And do you see how crispy that bacon gets when you cook it that way? You don't get those little flabby bits, you just get crispy all the way. I'm gonna go into the mixture with that bacon. And then in addition, just to really amp up the fact that these are very like autumnal cornbread muffins, I'm gonna go in with some rosemary. You could also do this with sage, but this really makes it into kind of sort of like a dinner roll kind of category. The rosemary gives you really nice flavor. Again, sage would be beautiful. A little bit of thyme might be okay, but I'd stick to rosemary or sage personally. I'm gonna finely chop that up. You want about a tablespoon or 2, depending on how much rosemary you want. And again, if you don't want them super autumny, feel free to leave this out. This is also a great kind of swap out for your bread basket for your maybe holiday table coming up, super tasty. So I'm gonna go in with that rosemary and bacon, best friends. Give that a mix, and as you see, as soon as I start mixing this, do you see those bubbles in that batter? That's that baking soda and baking powder starting to work. So that's already giving us a little bit of lift, making this light and fluffy. Now over here, I have got a 12-cup muffin tin that I've just greased with a little bit of nonstick cooking spray. If you want, you could also do a little bit of bacon fat in there. I wouldn't be mad at that, not gonna lie. And all you need to do is, I like to use an ice cream scoop, dish this right on into those cups. Makes about 12 if you wanted to. If you wanted like a classic cornbread loaf, I would do this in a cast iron skillet. Heat the skillet up first, melt some butter or some bacon fat in there, and then pop that in the oven. It'll bake for longer, but it'll be absolutely beautiful. Once you've got all those filled, you wanna pop that into, again, that 400-degree oven. So super hot, pop it in, and then cook those for about 20 to 25 minutes until they are beautiful, a little risen, smelling absolutely delicious, and you end up with some really cute little pumpkin muffins. Like, you smell the rosemary, that golden brown base. Pop those into like a little bread basket. Stick that on your next table. Honestly, this is such a great side for dinner. Great with a bowl of chili. It's also the perfect thing to grab and go if you're out trick-or-treating this Friday. Do you see all those little bits of bacon in there? That little bit of rosemary too? Like, that looks really good to me. Okay, to me, you serve this up with a little bit of butter with some flaky sea salt on there. What a delight. A lot of butter, you know how it is.
Hey, Mary here. What did you think? Drop your comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the good stuff.